Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will begin in 2 minutes. Please take your seats and silence all electronic devices. Please rise for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of the national anthem and the invocation by Lieutenant Colonel Chaplain Meadows, Chaplain to the Corps of Cadets.
Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we give you thanks this morning as we celebrate with these young men and women as they commission into the armed forces. We thank you as they become new lieutenants and ensigns and go off to serve, that we can be proud of them for all of their accomplishments here as cadets, members of the ROTC communities. We give you thanks for all of the hard work that they, their classmates, their instructors, and their families have put in to get them to this point. And as they come to the finish line of their cadet career, we celebrate with them as they start a new race, as they continue into the armed forces to serve in so many different areas. We pray that you would bless them and allow them to take those different qualities of duty, honor, and respect, and to go into these armed forces and serve with a servant's heart, that they would make their Citadel alma mater proud, that they would continue to serve both their branches, our nation, and ultimately you. We pray all this to you because yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen.
Please be seated. General and Mrs. Walters, Lieutenant General Beaudet, distinguished guests from the Citadel Board of Visitors, and friends and families of our commissioning cadets. On behalf of our professors of military, naval, and aerospace science and their cadre, welcome and thank you for attending the joint commissioning ceremony for the class of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, the Professor of Military Science, Colonel John M. Cyrillic.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Colonel John Cyrillic, the Professor of Military Science at the Citadel, and I am honored to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for today's joint commissioning ceremony of the 2021 graduates of the Citadel. On behalf of host Colonel Russ Boyce, United States Marine Corps Professor of Naval Science, and Colonel Matt Morand, United States Space Force Professor of Aerospace Studies, and myself, welcome. At this time, I would like to recognize the other members of our distinguished platform party. General Glenn M. Walters, United States Marine Corps, retired, President of the Citadel. Lieutenant General Fran Beaudet, United States Army, who is serving as our commissioning official and distinguished speaker. Colonel Myron Harrington, United States Marine Corps, retired, from our Board of Visitors. Captain Gino Peluso, United States Navy, retired, the Commandant of Cadets. And Lieutenant Colonel Chaplain Aaron Meadows, United States Air Force Reserves, the Citadel Chaplain. Members of the Board of Visitors, other distinguished guests, and most importantly, the proud families of our ROTC cadets. Thank you for participation and attendance at today's ceremony. Before I introduce our guest speaker and commissioning official, I would like to publicly thank all our teammates at the Citadel for the outstanding support that ROTC receives here. Our cadre sincerely appreciate all your efforts, and we hope you feel the same sense of mission accomplishment and pride as we commission 153 members of the Citadel class of 2021 as United States military officers at this ceremony. I would be sorely remiss if I did not acknowledge the years of support, mentorship, coaching, and caring of all those who have had a significant impact on the development of these fine young men and women. On behalf of all of us in the 3 ROTC departments, please accept our sincerest congratulations on a job very well done. We are indeed fortunate to have such an outstanding cohort from the class of 2021 joining the profession of arms. We are also very fortunate to have Lieutenant General Fran M. Beaudet serve as our distinguished speaker and commissioning official this morning. Lieutenant General Beaudet graduated from the Citadel in 1989 and was awarded a commission in the United States Army, where he has served on active duty since. Lieutenant General Beaudet served as a military intelligence and special forces officer until his accession into the general officer ranks. He has led an especially impressive career and commanded special forces units at every level. He is currently the commanding general of the United States Army Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And his complete biography is in your program. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Fran Beaudet.
Good morning, and thank you. Thanks, John, for that warm introduction. Thanks also to General Walters, sir, for this opportunity. I'm truly humbled to be here. Colonel Harrington, sir, my honor to be here with you today. You're a true national hero, and to our great Board of Visitors as well, thank you. Gentlemen, friends, family, ladies, especially the 153 newly commissioning officers, it's really my honor to be here with you today on our nation's greatest campus. I'd like to start with a plain fact. I have no recollection who the guest speaker was at my commissioning ceremony. And so I fully expect my impact on you will be similar. So I'll do my best to keep this brief. I do, however, recall that my bride of 32 years, who's here with me today, pinned my second lieutenant bars on me. And I also only vaguely recall that I could only fit in my initial uniform until about the time that I made captain. She would argue that it's much less than a year after graduation, likely related to a post-Ranger School dietary correction I had to make, which is probably closer to the truth. But thankfully, that won't happen to anyone out here. So I want to start by sharing a few points that hopefully help us frame the significance of this event today. The first is that all of us who serve the nation today and those who have gone before you and served are incredibly thankful that you are here today. Your pending personal oath and commitment to the ideal of our great nation, to its founding document, and to your decision to selflessly serve fellow Americans are part and parcel in my mind of your individual greatness. If you remember one thing from today's busy schedule, please remember this. We are all as proud of you as you should be for yourselves. And we know that with your ascension into uniformed service, our nation's security is in great hands. The warrior spirit and associated values are formed in the home at an early age. So again, thank you to those families joining us today, both in person and virtually from across America. You deserve tremendous credit for what you've done and for what you do to support your incredible sons and daughters, for your commitment to their continued progress towards excellence, and for your own journey of service to our great nation. Y'all did great, or they wouldn't be here today. So as of today, you're all officially inducted into our A-team. I promise you won't have to be on jump status, but welcome to the exceptional family of service. I have no doubt that your sons and daughters will continue to make you and all Americans proud. We're here this week also to mark the culmination of your 4-year journey in academics, leadership, ethics, and military training that transform you from knobs to commissioned officers. Today, you're going to march in the long gray line, and tomorrow you'll cross the stage and graduate. They are well-earned recognitions of all that you learned to get here, especially those late nights, those early mornings, cram sessions, exams, papers, everything it took to get you here. Along the way, you've also spent some time thinking about your why. At some point, you probably asked yourself, why did I choose the Citadel? Why didn't I choose an easier path like Clemson or West Point? So did the other 382 members of your class who aren't commissioning today. Like them, you chose to come to this outstanding institution to test yourselves and to do something more. But you took it one step further, and you joined the finest military the world has ever seen. You will raise your hand and swear an oath to protect, defend, support our Constitution. Some of these are the whys that explain this decision: a desire to serve, to be part of something greater than your individual selves, to defend your families, to defend our American way of life, and likely there's many more. And I have no doubt each of you also has many more personal and specific whys. Ensign Philip Wellens, for instance, is following in his grandfather's footsteps and is the Navy's newest Seaman Admiral after excelling as an enlisted submariner. Marine Second Lieutenant Alexei Severniak is a first-generation American like me. He inherited his immigrant father's fire and determination. But unlike me, he probably understands math, so aspires to be a Marine astronaut like my classmate, Randy Bresnik. Army Second Lieutenant John Eggers is following in the footsteps of his father. Special Forces Captain Daniel Eggers, one of our greatest heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our great nation. Those are but three of the unique and powerful stories here about why each of you are joining us today. Whatever your personal why is, hold on to it, think about it, and refine it throughout your career, because it's foundational to the choice that you made, the adventure you are embarking on, and the great journey that lies ahead. We look forward to what you'll do and what you'll achieve on behalf of our nation. We celebrate the confidence and compassion in which you will lead, and the humility and selflessness in which you will serve. In our profession, it's our moral obligation to prevail in conflict. Doing so requires that we train and fight as a joint force, because it's the most effective, most lethal way to win our nation's wars. So, it is fitting that you begin your military careers here, seated amongst your brothers and sisters of the Joint Force. You studied and maybe suffered and strived together. You formed bonds and developed relationships that will one day, I have no doubt, pay dividends on the field of battle if that's what the nation needs of you. And just so you have a clear-eyed understanding of what you've signed up for, the multi-domain battlefield will only require more joint action and greater interoperability. On a possible battlefield of the near future, success will hinge on your ability to fight as a joint force. Picture, if you will, a small Army Special Operations element deep in a denied area, attacking enemy infrastructure to open a corridor for a Marine task force. The amphibious assault force, made up of autonomous and manned landing craft and sensors, launches its attack from a fleet of next-generation naval ships. Overhead, sorties of unmanned naval combat aircraft and Air Force stealth fighters stand by to provide fires. Deep in a bunker, a Space Force Guardian is creating a protective bubble as the Marines maneuver, mitigating the enemy's space-based observation capabilities. Cyber soldiers and information warfare practitioners are degrading enemy capabilities and eroding their morale. This is where it all comes together, and where fighting as a joint force will make all the difference to those service members involved, to those men and women in it to win it. Right now, it all sounds complicated, but I assure you it isn't. In fact, its principles of success are relatively simple. And since I'm sure y'all likely read some Da Vinci here, you'll agree that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So, as we talk about an uncertain future, one in which you'll no doubt dominate, I want to share something of said simplicity from our past. And unless you majored in obscure American inventions at the College of Charleston, you've never heard of Major Thomas Dennehy, but he played a pivotal role in supporting our fighting men and women during World War II. Soldiers, sailors, and Marines, and I didn't say airmen because they were still part of the Army Air Corps, faced many challenges on the battlefield. Bad weather, fierce enemies, and often lackluster equipment, to name a few. So in 1942, early that year, the greatest generation was facing an even more urgent problem that needed solving. And it revolved around one of the most important daily human military events, something we call chow time. The problem was specifically how to get into a sea ration can. Now, this was especially a big deal for Marines and soldiers on the front lines. Not that they were overly excited about digging into some meat and beans, but I imagine punching holes in a can with a bayonet, an E-tool, or a 30 cal round at the bottom of a muddy foxhole while under fire just wasn't that appealing. Enter Major Dennehy. In the summer of '42, he looked at the problem, and there were previously proposed solutions, all of them exceedingly complex and therefore unworkable. And it took him just 30 days to develop a solution. It was 1.5 inches long, folded flat, easily fit on your dog tag chain or a key ring, and it could be mass produced, cheap. I'm talking, of course, about the P38 can opener you found on your seats today. With just 38 cranks, a soldier in France, a Marine on Iwo Jima, a sailor in the Pacific, or an Army Air Corps pilot in China could quickly and efficiently open a can of meat-like deliciousness. It was such a successful solution to the problem that it frankly outlasted the sea ration itself. And it's been used by hundreds of thousands of service members across multiple conflicts. It's still in production today and still wildly popular for its versatility. Can opener, screwdriver, weapons cleaning tool, I am told, but I have not seen this, Christmas tree ornament, and of course, deadly weapon in the hands of any Green Beret. But on a side admin note, the last reason is not why you were issued a P38 today, so keep it between the range fans out there. But the bottom line is the P38 was a simple solution to a wicked problem. It was an innovation that had an impact on an entire generation, and it's another symbol that brought the Joint Force together. Each service had its own nicknames for the P38, but it had universal, practical value. And when he commissioned, like you, Major Dennehy had no idea of the game-changing impact he'd have on his brothers and sisters in arms. So remember this, like him, you also own the potential to affect monumental change, and I know you will. You are heirs to his spirit of innovation and problem solving. You all will lead us in the information age. You will drive change. You will innovate at speed, and you will test the boundaries of the possible. You're going to face wicked problems of your own, but because you have an ironclad why and you're prepared to adapt, you're destined to succeed. I look forward to seeing who among you develops your generation's version of the P38. Something that's simple, it's effective, can stand the test of time, and frankly, whether you ever open a can with it or not, the one you get today ought to remain as a symbol of the tremendous promise you represent for our great nation. Rightfully so, much of this week is about celebrating what you've done over the last 4 years, because it is a huge deal. But today, this ceremony is about recognizing what you will do and what lies ahead. And I hope that each of you go forward from here with an eye towards your especially bright future, and your feet squarely rooted in the values that you've gained from this great institution. Protect your honor, do your duty, take care of your great service members and their families, and treat everyone across the globe with the utmost dignity and respect. Whether you earned your bars by paying dues in the mighty Palmetto Battalion, Detachment 765, the Naval ROTC unit, or the Citadel Marine Contingent, today you all become military officers and key leaders in our nation's joint force. And while the future is uncertain, I assure you that change is constant in the profession of arms. Today, you've been issued your P-38. I hope it inspires you to tackle problems boldly, unites you as new members of the Joint Force, and serves as a simple reminder of your own personal greatness, only waiting for you to cross today's line of departure. Thank you for what you all do for all of us across this country. Good luck, and may God bless this great institution, our nation's world-class military, and may God continue to bless America. Thank you.
At this time, everyone please rise in preparation for the commissioning oath and the affixing of rank.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name. Having been appointed an officer in the grade of second lieutenant or ensign, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservations or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. So help me God. Congratulations.
We will now execute the pinning of the newest Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force officers. All those pinning, please affix second lieutenant or ensign rank on their officer's uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause for our military's newest officers. Please be seated. At this time, these officers will move forward to receive their commissioning certificates from Lieutenant General Beaudet and General Walters. Second Lieutenant Carson Adams, U.S. Army National Guard, Aviation, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Jenna Adcock, U.S. Army Reserve, Quartermaster. Ensign Isaac Al-Tamimi, U.S. Naval Active Duty Naval Aviator. Second Lieutenant Allison Ansel, U.S. Army National Guard Engineer. Second Lieutenant Heath Baker, U.S. Army Active Duty Medical Services Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Michelle Banzan, U.S. Army Active Duty Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Andrew Barnes, U.S. Army Active Duty Adjutant General. Second Lieutenant Jack Beeler, U.S. Army National Guard Ordnance. Second Lieutenant Christian Bent, U.S. Army Active Duty Chemical Corps. Second Lieutenant Adam Blankenship, U.S. Army National Guard Infantry. Second Lieutenant Joseph Bolches, U.S. Army Active Duty Armor Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Ruby Bolden, U.S. Army Active Duty Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Conrad Borneman, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Remotely Piloted Aircraft Pilot. Ensign Andrew Brabazon, U.S. Navy Active Duty Submarine Officer. Second Lieutenant Robert Brabston, U.S. Army Active Duty Chemical Corps. Second Lieutenant Donald Leroy Brechtel, U.S. Army Active Duty Ordnance. Second Lieutenant Kevin Brown, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Remotely Piloted Aircraft Pilot. Second Lieutenant Taurus Brown, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Financial Management. Second Lieutenant Louis Bulnes, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant Tamia Birch, U.S. Army Active Duty Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Patrick Camacho, U.S. Army Reserve Engineer. Second Lieutenant Andrew Caron, U.S. Army Reserve Engineer. Second Lieutenant Garrett Christie, U.S. Army Reserve Engineer. Second Lieutenant William Clements, U.S. Army Active Duty Air Defense. Second Lieutenant Micah Cohen, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant Keegan Connolly, U.S. Army Active Duty Military Police Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Lydia Cook, U.S. Army Reserve Medical Services Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Darian Cooper, U.S. Army Active Duty Chemical Corps. Second Lieutenant Theodore Capola, U.S. Army Active Duty Transportation. Second Lieutenant Delson Coward, U.S. Army Reserve Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Thomas Crawford, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Pilot. Second Lieutenant Jesse Crook, U.S. Army National Guard Engineer, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Michael Curtis, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant William Curtis, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant Riley Davis, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Remotely Piloted Aircraft. Second Lieutenant Simon Diolio, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Combat Systems Officer. Second Lieutenant Maggie Decker, U.S. Army Reserve Adjutant General. Second Lieutenant Christian DeJong, U.S. Army Active Duty Air Defense Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Andrew Desjardins, U.S. Army Marine Corps Active Duty Ground Officer. Second Lieutenant Matthew Devine, U.S. Army Reserve Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Parker Dixon, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant James Dixon, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Combat Systems Operator. Second Lieutenant Matthew Dixon, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant Owen Dunn, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Pilot. Second Lieutenant John Eggers, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Tyler Ellison, U.S. Army National Guard Infantry. Second Lieutenant Aaron Fannin, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant William Finlayson, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Civil Engineer. Second Lieutenant Robert Fenney, U.S. Army Active Duty Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Joseph Field, U.S. Marine Corps Ground Officer, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Miles Philippus, U.S. Army Active Duty Armor, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Robert Fisher, U.S. Army National Guard Signal Corps. Second Lieutenant Samuel Fohn, U.S. Army Reserve Ordnance. Second Lieutenant Etienne Fontenot, U.S. Army Active Duty Aviation Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Nicholas Frashoni, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Christopher Fricky, U.S. Army Active Duty Armor. Second Lieutenant Justin Friedlander, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Civil Engineer. Second Lieutenant Christopher Furmanek, U.S. Army Active Duty Ordnance. Ensign Aaron Gilberto, U.S. Navy Active Duty Surface Warfare Officer. Second Lieutenant Timothy Gillette, U.S. Army Active Duty Engineer. Ensign Joshua Gorzinski, U.S. Navy Active Duty Special Warfare Officer. Second Lieutenant William Grant, U.S. Army Reserve Engineer, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Alfred Gregg, U.S. Army Active Duty Quartermaster. Ensign Ulysses Grissett, U.S. Navy Active Duty Naval Flight Officer. Second Lieutenant Thomas Hammerstone, U.S. Army Reserve Military Intelligence. Second Lieutenant Noah Hammond, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Pilot, Distinguished Graduate. Second Lieutenant Joshua Hardesty, U.S. Army Reserve Aviation. Second Lieutenant Hamilton Hardman, U.S. Army National Guard Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Bryce Harrington, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Daniel Haydell, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Contracting Officer. Second Lieutenant Connor Hayes, U.S. Army Active Duty Military Police. Second Lieutenant Gary Haywood, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Force Support. Second Lieutenant Harrison Hemminghaus, U.S. Army Reserve Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Liam Henderson, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant Catherine Hill, U.S. Army Reserve Army Nurse. Second Lieutenant Michael Hocutt, U.S. Army Active Duty Aviation. Second Lieutenant Matthew Hurt, U.S. Army National Guard Engineer. Second Lieutenant Jonathan Jarrett, U.S. Army National Guard Transportation. Second Lieutenant Patrick Johnson, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant Jacob Josepher, U.S. Army National Guard Engineer. Second Lieutenant Wesley Kelly, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Tanner Kanaw, U.S. Army Active Duty Educational Delay Chaplain Corps, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Jeffrey Kidner, U.S. Army Active Duty Engineer. Second Lieutenant John Kidner, U.S. Army Active Duty Engineer. Second Lieutenant Jacob Knapp, U.S. Army Reserve Ordnance. Second Lieutenant Carl Kiesig, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Contracting. Second Lieutenant James Kober, U.S. Army National Guard Military Intelligence Distinguished Military Graduate. Ensign Roman Kakowski, U.S. Navy Active Duty Submarine Officer, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant John Chrysler, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Cyber. Second Lieutenant Lillian Layden, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Cyber. Second Lieutenant Michael Lupachansky, U.S. Air Force Active Duty General Engineer. Second Lieutenant Joseph Lucarelli, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant James Maddox, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant James Madre, U.S. Army National Guard Infantry. Second Lieutenant Charles Marsh, U.S. Air Force Active Duty General Engineer. Second Lieutenant Marshall McKee, U.S. Air Force active duty pilot. Second Lieutenant Brock Mell, U.S. Marine Corps active duty ground officer. Second Lieutenant Regina Miles, U.S. Marine Corps active duty ground officer. Second Lieutenant Hunter Mills, U.S. Army Reserve military intelligence. Second Lieutenant Caleb Mosley, U.S. Air Force active duty tactical air control party distinguished graduate. Second Lieutenant Joseph Murphy, U.S. Army National Guard armor. Second Lieutenant Hunter Neely, U.S. Army National Guard military intelligence. Second Lieutenant Houston Osborne, U.S. Army National Guard engineer. Second Lieutenant Kensley Paget, U.S. Army National Guard Ordnance distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant William Peeler, U.S. Army National Guard Air Defense. Ensign Nicholas Piacentini, U.S. Navy active duty Special Warfare Officer distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Samuel Poulin, U.S. Marine Corps active duty aviation officer. Ensign Ethan Powers, U.S. Navy active duty naval aviator. Second Lieutenant William Rathke, U.S. Army active duty military intelligence distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Olivia Rentz, U.S. Air Force active duty cyber. Second Lieutenant Benjamin Richardson, U.S. Army Reserve transportation. Second Lieutenant Derek Robertson, U.S. Army National Guard aviation. Second Lieutenant Kershawn Royal, U.S. Army National Guard Adjutant General. Second Lieutenant Adam Russell, U.S. Army active duty ordnance. Ensign Logan Schrantz, U.S. Navy active duty submarine officer. Ensign Garrett Siebold, U.S. Navy active duty surface warfare officer. Second Lieutenant Christian Seidler, U.S. Air Force active duty tactical air control party. Second Lieutenant Alexei Severniak, U.S. Marine Corps active duty aviation officer, distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Pedro Sharp, U.S. Army active duty armorer. Second Lieutenant James Shields, U.S. Army active duty infantry, distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Douglas Smith, U.S. Army active duty transportation. Second Lieutenant Halston Smith, U.S. Army active duty signal corps. Second Lieutenant Ethan Stanley, U.S. Army active duty infantry, distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Ian Steffen, U.S. Army active duty infantry, distinguished military graduate. Second Lieutenant Uday Stout, U.S. Army Reserve Chemical Corps. Second Lieutenant Clifford Swindell, U.S. Army active duty engineer. Second Lieutenant Cameron Thomas, U.S. Air Force active duty combat systems officer. Second Lieutenant Connor Thomas, U.S. Army Active Duty Quartermaster. Ensign Peter Tillman, U.S. Navy Active Duty Submarine Officer. Second Lieutenant Evan Timpner, U.S. Army National Guard Quartermaster. Ensign Jacob True, U.S. Navy Active Duty Surface Warfare Officer. Second Lieutenant Cody Turner, U.S. Army Active Duty Ordnance. Second Lieutenant Robert Tywater, U.S. Army National Guard Infantry. Second Lieutenant Benjamin Walker, U.S. Army National Guard Aviation. Second Lieutenant James Walker, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Pilot. Second Lieutenant Matthew Wall, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant James Watford, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant Corey Watson, U.S. Army National Guard Quartermaster. Second Lieutenant Colton Webster, U.S. Army Reserve Engineer. Second Lieutenant Chase Wengard, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Jonathan Westmoreland, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Ryan Williams, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant Joanna Winborn, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Pilot Distinguished Graduate. Second Lieutenant Brian Wise, U.S. Air Force Active Duty Airfield Operations. Second Lieutenant Justice Woods, U.S. Army National Guard Field Artillery. Second Lieutenant Jack Zappendorf, U.S. Army Active Duty Engineer. Second Lieutenant Jeremy Gentle, U.S. Marine Corps Active Duty Ground Officer. Ensign Catherine Hollingsworth, U.S. Navy Active Duty Submarine Officer. Second Lieutenant Ronald Reed, U.S. Marine Corps Active Duty Ground Officer. Ensign Philip Wellens, U.S. Navy Active Duty Submarine Officer, Distinguished Military Graduate. Second Lieutenant Jonathan Robinson, U.S. Army Active Duty Infantry. Second Lieutenant Zion Smith, U.S. Army Reserve Transportation. Second Lieutenant DeAndre Adams, U.S. Army Reserve Quartermaster. Another round of applause for the United States Army's newest officers.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just a few minutes, we will execute the first salute ceremonies with the new officers on historic Summerall Field. The first salute is a very important tradition in our military. The newly commissioned officer customarily presents a silver dollar after returning the salute of the non-commissioned officer that had the most profound impact on them during their pre-commissioning training. This displays sincere gratitude for the mentorship and lessons imparted by the non-commissioned officer and is a demonstration of their utmost respect and professionalism. Finally, I would like to thank Major Jay Velasco and Major Jeremy Ditlipson for all their hard work and all the other teammates. Thank you. In preparation and the conduct of this ceremony. They have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort over the last several weeks setting the conditions for this special event. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. To all of you here today and observing this event online, we wish your Citadel family the absolute best in all future endeavors. Thank you and good day.
At this time, please rise and remain standing for the benediction, the playing of the service medley, and the departure of the official party. The words to the service-specific songs are located on the back of your program.
As you go off into the world to face those wicked problems and overcome them, let us leave with the Lord's blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord turn his face upon you and be gracious towards you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and grant you peace and long and successful military careers. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. At this time, each row will take all direction from the non-commissioned officer at the end of your row and exit McAlister Field House. Thank you.